I was thinking that because probably in your situation you have some cushion and some time given that if you make mistakes you can just continue on and keep the mistakes. What happens when, for example, you have let's say a budget or something that is constrained and you have to go and do it on these terms and in that time frame, so that you cannot be so agile into making mistakes. And using Scrum, how do you think it may help it? While, let's say, because if you deliver at the end, you know that you will just fit into this requirement. But if you go through Scrum and then you see some mistakes made and some requirements that are not okay, and then you have to turn back into them again, you may not fit into the budget. How can you just first, for example, the question is how can you renegotiate this with the customer, let's say? And second, how can you be so brave to do it? I mean, in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with the budget and with the core functionality. So every project, because it's a project, you have a timeline, resources, budget, and some scope. In agile world, we say, okay, the timeline and the resources, usually they are set because we have this one team and we have this delivery date. But the scope is variable. It doesn't mean that nothing will deliver and we will still get the money. But the scope is variable and we need to negotiate with the customer this variability of the scope. And you do that with, of course, with some work with the stakeholder on the features and with the team on the features before you commit at the end the project. And you come up with, usually, I mean, if you follow all the rules of Scrum, you will do something like a release planning, just to understand the features, estimate them, check the velocity of the team, see what you can achieve with the minimum velocity, what you can achieve with the maximum velocity to scope the things. Because with the minimum velocity is something that you will definitely achieve. And you can say to the customer, okay, that's the minimum viable scope, and we will be very, confident to say that we will achieve this one. What you can, you are also very confident after that to say what you will not be able to achieve, because everything which is after the maximum velocity, it's out of scope. And then there is this interesting part in between, that's the focus of the product owner and the stakeholder over the next sprints, how to make it that the software is capable of doing that with limiting the resources or using the resources in the most productive way so that we can get a solution. Because we developers, because I'm also a developer, we can think of huge frameworks and huge things to solve this little problem, and the customer actually told that there is only one checkbox somewhere. And that's the variety of the scope that we leave for the team, the stakeholders, on this regularity that they will finalize, fine-tune to understand what is it, what can we remove, what we can get from the feedback of the customer and we can put because we missed it, but then remove something else. And that's the whole work of the product owner through the whole project, from the beginning to the end. Since we don't have all the requirements very detailedly specified and estimated how they will be done, there is also the variety inside, because some things will happen faster and easier than we expected. Okay, some will happen slower and more complex, but some will be faster and easier, and at the end it will even out. And as well, being able to involve your customers very early, to ask them, okay, so when you say, whatever, security management of the system, what exactly do you mean? What is it? What do you want to be able to do with the system? And we then try to specify and specify and specify over the time. At the end, we find out that some of the things we, as engineers, we thought we have to protect the customer from everything we can imagine, he doesn't need, and we can leave out from the scope. So this is about the budget, about being brave risk averse, you know, I'm not someone who would say I'm very brave, you know, let's do it. On the other hand, I learned over my experience that if an option comes to me, like this one, do you want to try Scrum? Do you want to be a Scrum mentor? Do you want to be... Actually, it's important that I respond to this option because then it will be gone after a while. And for me, at least so far, it worked out perfectly. The moment I see the willingness on the other side as well, because it was also my manager who said, I'm allowing you to do this pilot project, which means I'm also sharing the risk if something is not okay. Then, why not? And this is also an answer. If there is a customer who is willing to do that, try the first one with such a customer. You know, don't try to somehow, you know, find the hardest problem customer and try to convince him. You know, try with a project that you see it will have an opportunity, and then make everything possible to that.
And by the way, how did you measure the velocity? Was it in story points developed?
So yeah, in story points, but people have hard time to understand them. What usually is the biggest mistake is that they don't understand that this is a relative measure. And you need something to relate to in this case. Which means we need to find a story that the team knows or have done. Best is if they have done this story. And then we say, okay, that's around 1 or around 2. They can choose, you know, the story. If they haven't done it, they need to understand very well the work inside. Not how much time it takes you or how much time it will take me, but the work. I need to write, you know, such and such class with so many methods, with such a complexity. I need documentation of few pages to document the decisions. I need a UI design with few boxes there, and I need an end-user documentation, for example. And when they understand the quantity of work and the complexity or easiness of work, when we compare the next user story, it goes to compare with this one. And the biggest mistake is actually that most of the team, they don't do that. They don't do this step. They just start to throw some numbers, you know, and then this number means nothing. Because you cannot relate to this 1 or 2, which is your reference story. And reference stories, they are only reference stories for one team. Even if you have many teams, they should measure in what they understand. Of course, some of the teams that they gave up, they do person days at the end. Ideal person days, and it's not so good. And also what is not so good with person days is that you have no measure to show your progress over the time, if you improved the process or you improved your skills, because you're just getting better in measuring. So whatever you put is exactly whatever you get. And with the story points, because you measure the quantity of work, and then you say, okay, in the first sprint we did quantity of work 20, but because we became better and our process became better, in the next sprint we do work of quantity 30 and 40, and we can see this progress, and it's actually very stimulating for the people to continue learning. And if you do the man days, you will do, okay, we have a capacity of 100 days, we planned for 100 days. We have a capacity of 100 days, we planned for 100 days. Even if we did more, there is no way that we can understand what is more.
I have a question. Let's say a client comes to you with a new project, and like you said, it's about budget and deadline, and then you see what you can deliver in this budget and for that deadline. Using agile, what do you think is the maximum deadline that you, in months, for example, that you're trying to set as a goal? Just because if you set a 1 year of a deadline with a budget for, let's say, 10 people for this year, then I don't think, and there was some assumptions in the beginning of the year of what will be done using agile. then at the end of this year it might be a totally different thing that was initially planned. For a stakeholder that have the right state of mind, this is okay, because this means that their initial assumptions have been changed, and this is for the better for them as well. But there are people that are used to, you know, I have this idea and I want to be delivered for this time frame and this amount of money, and they won't be easily